Orcas, or killer whales, you see them at theme parks jumping through hoops looking all friendly and majestic. But what if I told you that behind that black and white smile is one of the most intelligent, powerful, and sometimes deadliest predators on Earth? Today we're counting down the 12 most terrifying orca attacks ever caught on camera or documented in history, and trust me, you will not believe what happens in number 1. We've spent weeks researching, gathering footage, and speaking with people who have witnessed these events firsthand. You might think you know killer whales, but after watching this video, you'll see them in a whole new light. And before we even start, I want you to subscribe, because if you think this is crazy, you have no idea what we have planned for next week's video. Now, let's get into the top 12 deadliest orca attacks in history. You are not going to want to miss a single one of these. Number 12 on our list isn't just one attack. It's a tragic story spanning decades, centered around one massive bull orca named Tilikum. His story begins in 1991 at a place called Sea Land of the Pacific in Canada. A young part-time trainer named Kelty Burns slipped and fell into the pool with Tilikum and 2 other orcas. The whales pulled her under, refusing to let her surface. After this tragedy, you'd think things would change, right? Wrong. Sealand closed, and Tilikum was sold to SeaWorld in Orlando. But in 1999, tragedy struck again, and this one is bizarre. A 27-year-old man named Daniel Dukes somehow evaded security at night and got into Tilikum's tank. The next morning his lifeless nude body was found draped over Tilikum's back. You're probably thinking there's no way they kept this whale performing after 2 deaths. But they did. In 2010, in front of a horrified live audience, Tilikum grabbed his most experienced trainer, Dawn Brancho, by her arm and ponytail, pulling her into the water. Before Dawn Brancho's death, there were over 100 documented cases of orca aggression at SeaWorld parks alone, many of which could have easily been fatal. Trainers being held at the bottom of pools suffering broken bones, experiencing near drownings. In 1987, an orca named Orca II landed on top of him, crushing his pelvis, crushing his femur, crushing his ribs. Tilikum's story is a chilling reminder of the consequences of confining a highly intelligent, socially complex apex predator to a concrete tank. He was involved in 3 human deaths over his lifetime, making him statistically the most dangerous killer whale in history. His aggression wasn't random. It was seen by many experts as a direct result of the psychological trauma of captivity. From being captured in the wild as a calf, to the stress of confinement, Tilikum's life is a tragic cautionary tale and a dark chapter in the history of human-animal interaction. Coming in at number 10, we leave the concrete pools of SeaWorld and head to the open ocean, specifically the Strait of Gibraltar. Since 2020, a bizarre and unprecedented phenomenon has been occurring. A specific subpopulation of Iberian orcas has started systematically attacking sailboats. I'm not talking about 1 or 2 isolated incidents. We're talking about over 500 documented encounters. These aren't just curious bumps. This is coordinated, targeted aggression. The orcas, often led by a female matriarch named White Gladys, are specifically going after the rudders of the boats. Imagine you're sailing peacefully, miles from shore, when suddenly your boat comes to a violent halt. You look over the side and see multiple massive orcas, some weighing over 6 tons, ramming your rudder with their heads. For our number 9 spot, we travel to the cold waters off the coast of British Columbia, a place famous for its wild orca populations. In 2018, a kayaker named Adam was paddling alone, enjoying the serene beauty of the coastline, when he found himself surrounded by a pod of 5 orcas. Finally, the orca used its head to knock the kayak, tipping Adam into the water. At number 8, we head down under to the waters off New Zealand and Australia, where sailors have reported terrifying encounters that mirror the events in Gibraltar, but with a different, more brute force approach. Unlike the rudder-focused attacks in the Atlantic, these incidents involve orcas ramming the hulls of small vessels with incredible force. A large male orca, estimated to be over 25 feet long, repeatedly charged their vessel. Number 7 on our list takes us to the famous surf breaks of the California coast. While shark attacks are a well-known risk for surfers, an encounter with an aggressive orca is almost unheard of. In 1972, a 19-year-old surfer named Hans Kretschmer was paddling his board near Point Sur, California, waiting for a wave. Before he could even process what was happening, the orca opened its mouth and bit down on his thigh. Coming in at number 6, a category of encounters both terrifying and profoundly strange. Wild orcas approach swimmers or divers in the open ocean, and instead of attacking, they lift them out of the water. Imagine being in deep water and suddenly feeling a massive, unstoppable force from below, pushing you up toward the surface on the head or back of a killer whale. Number 5 is an incident that takes the fear of a close encounter to a whole new level. This report comes from the European Atlantic coast, where a sea kayaker was paddling near a known orca feeding ground. But then, the orca came up from behind and bit down on the stern toggle. With the toggle firmly in its mouth, the orca began to swim, pulling the kayak and its terrified occupant backward through the water. At number 4 we have an incident where the supposed safety of a larger boat offers no protection. Whale watching tours are meant to be a safe way to see these magnificent creatures, but for one group of tourists, it turned into a nightmare. A whale watching boat, carrying around 30 passengers, was observing a pod of orcas when the animal's behavior suddenly turned aggressive. One massive male launched itself partially out of the water and slammed down onto the swim platform at the back of the boat. Number 3 on our list involves a dangerous intersection of human activity and orca intelligence: fishing. Orcas are incredibly smart. They've learned fishing boats can be an easy source of food. One dramatic account comes from a spearfisher in the tropics. He was attached to the spear by a line connected to his wrist. Suddenly he was pulled through the water at high speed as the orca swam off with the tuna. Our number 2 spot is reserved for a type of encounter that is perhaps the most tragically misunderstood. Orcas are highly social and playful creatures, especially the younger ones. But what happens when their plaything is a human? When an animal that weighs as much as a school bus decides to play rough, the consequences can be fatal, even if there's no malicious intent. And now, for the number 1 deadliest and most terrifying orca encounter. This isn't about one whale or a quick attack. It's about a sustained, collective assault by an entire pod. In 2022, a small yacht with 5 people on board was sailing in a remote part of the Pacific when it was suddenly surrounded by a pod of at least 8 orcas. There was no warning. One moment the sea was calm, the next, they were encircled by the ocean's apex predators. The mood was not playful, it was immediately hostile. The attack began with the entire pod ramming the boat from all directions simultaneously. The coordinated assault was terrifyingly intelligent. The crew felt massive jarring impacts port starboard stern. The largest male in the pod focused on the rudder, hitting it again and again with its head, the sound of splintering fiberglass echoing through the boat. Meanwhile, other orcas were ramming the hull, trying to breach it. Some of them started leaping out of the water, crashing their massive bodies down on the deck of the yacht. The crew watched in horror as a 20-foot whale cleared the water and slammed down just feet from the cockpit. They were trapped, miles from help, in a coordinated siege. This was not random aggression. This was a hunt. The terrifying ordeal lasted for nearly 2 hours. The crew sent out a distress signal, but help was far away. They were convinced they were going to die. The rudder was completely destroyed, the hull was compromised, the boat was taking on water. Then, as suddenly as it began, the attack stopped. The pod disengaged and swam away, leaving the crippled vessel and its traumatized crew adrift. So there you have it. 12 of the most terrifying orca attacks ever documented. From the tragic consequences of captivity with Tilikum, to the organized rebellion in the Strait of Gibraltar and the sheer raw power of a full pod assault. It's clear these are not just gentle giants or theme park performers. They are highly intelligent, socially complex predators at the absolute top of the food chain. This was an intense video to make. If you found it as fascinating and terrifying as we did, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because we're just getting started. Let me know in the comments which story shocked you the most. Was it Tilikum? The Gibraltar sailboats? The full pod assault? I read all the comments. Let's talk about it. See you in the next video.